Open meeting for Thursday, February 5th, 2026. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, January 29th, 2026, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, January 29, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notice associated with Agenda Item 2, the suggested minute associated with Agenda Item 3, approving the scope of Quadrennial Planning Process 5 provided in Table 2 of staff's memorandum dated January 6, 2026, the suggested minute associated with Agenda Item 4, determining that the City of Janesville violated state statutes and regulations by constructing the cold storage building without prior commission authorization, directing commission staff to send a letter of reprimand to the utility for violation of WIS Stat 196.49 and WIS Admin Code PSC 184.03, and requiring the utility submit a plan to the commission within 30 days of the final decision as to the measures it will implement to avoid a reoccurrence of a similar violation in the future, and allowing the utility to seek rate recovery of project costs associated with the construction of the cold storage building in the utility's current rate case in docket 2740 WR 111. The suggested minute associated with Agenda Item 5, deeming that for all three instances, the requirements of WIS Admin Code PSC 135.03 Sub 2 have been met, and approving the Wisconsin Power and Light's request for a waiver of WIS Admin Code PSC 135.621 Sub 2 as to those instances with all conditions recommended by Commission staff. Or the suggested minute associated with Agenda Item 6, approving the request of Wisconsin Valley Improvement Company for authority to refinance debt securities with all conditions listed in Commission staff's memorandum dated January 22nd, 2026.
Thank you. I move we approve the notice of investigation associated with Agenda Item 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 5 FE 105, I move we approve the scope of the Quadrennial Planning Process 5 provided in Table 2 of our memo.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 2740 WI 100, I move we determine that the utility violated state statutes and regulations and take actions consistent with the Commission Secretary's description.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 6680 PL 2025, I move we approve with conditions the request for waiver consistent with the Commission Secretary's description.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
In docket 6725 SB 107, I move we approve the applicant's request for authority to refinance debt securities with all conditions outlined in the memo.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to our loan discussion item, which is agenda item number 7 today, 1515 CE 103, the application of Dairyland Power Cooperative for a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, or CPCN, to construct and operate the Wisconsin portion of Long Range Transmission Project, or LRTP Tranche 1, Project 4, consisting of a new 345 kV transmission line in the counties of Buffalo and Trempealeau, and this is known as the Alma to Blair Transmission Line Project. Our transmission guru, Commissioner Hawkins, is going to lead our discussion, so I will turn this over to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Strand. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that this week was the milestone for Commissioner Nieto, 2 years on the commission, per her bio on our website, so congratulations. Thank you. So today we're going to decide on the application by Dairyland Power Cooperative for the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity to construct the Alma to Blair transmission line. In leading the discussion today, I will first provide a brief overview of the project, and then we'll walk through each issue that is outlined in our decision matrix. There are 13 issues, some with sub-issues, 3 of which are uncontested, and I would like to discuss one of those today, which is issue 10D, when we get to that part of our DM. I want to start off by thanking everyone that participated in the development of the record for this docket. As always, staff has been hard at work. The total amount of hours, effort, and skill involved in reviewing this type of major project is really remarkable. And again, I think the commission is well supported to carry out our statutory requirements thanks to the dedicated and professional service that they provide this commission. Interveners in this docket include ATC, Clean Energy Organizations, MISO, and Renew Wisconsin. And then as always, I want to thank those that participated in the process by submitting public comments, either in our EIS scoping stage or later on as the docket progressed. Some of those comments and engagement early on at open houses that were hosted by the applicant led to proposed modifications and led to staff data requests. And again, I think these are all signs of our process working well, and in several instances led to positive outcomes for landowners. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I would also like to commend the applicant and our staff's early engagement with affected landowners and the proactive examination and back and forth they had to evaluate modifications, a couple of which are part of our DM today. And I thought that was all a good sign. All right, so project overview. When reviewing a transmission project, the commission considers alternative routes as well as need, engineering, economics, safety, reliability, individual hardships, and potential environmental effects. This project is part of a larger portfolio of regional projects approved by MISO, known as the Long Range Transmission Planning, or LRTP, Tranche 1 portfolio. I'll provide some high-level background information on that planning process because this project and the planning process overall, I think understanding that is helpful for understanding the evidence as to how we look at the benefits to just Wisconsin versus the broader region. And so even though this project is sourced from a larger pool or portfolio of projects, our evidence that we have in the record really does drill down and does a nice job of focusing on the specific requirements that we have here in the state of Wisconsin. So, as I said, the project is part of the LRTP Tranche 1 portfolio that came out of MISO's top-down regional planning process. The project, as approved by MISO, is classified as a multi-value project, or MVP, because it meets the criteria spelled out in MISO's tariff for this project type. This project type requires the demonstration of a variety of benefits, including reliability, the ability to meet future load and generation needs, the reduction of congestion and economic benefits, and the attainment of public policy mandates. The development of this group of projects began in March of 2021 and utilized future planning scenarios to analyze projects under a wide range of possible future conditions. MISO worked with stakeholders, including the applicant and other transmission owners, to identify potential solutions that addressed issues that were modeled in these future scenarios for the MISO Midwest subregion. These potential transmission solutions were then intensively studied through MISO's open and transparent stakeholder process. The stated goals of this planning process were to design a transmission portfolio that takes advantage of the linkages between local and regional reliability to provide economic benefits and ensure a reliable and economic electricity market. There were 18 regional projects that came out of this process, which MISO determined provides benefits broadly across the MISO Midwest subregion. Notably, all of the costs of this portfolio of projects, including the project that we'll be discussing here today, are spread according to an energy usage rate across the entire MISO Midwest subregion through what is known as the subregional MVP cost allocation method. Moving on to this specific project, the proposed Alma-Blair project includes the construction of a new 345 kV line from the existing Alma substation in Buffalo County to the expanded Trumbull substation recently authorized by the Commission in Docket 5 CE 158. The project would be constructed, owned, and operated by Dairyland. The project is the Wisconsin segment of a larger Wilmar North Rochester Trumbull project, which is affectionately known as LRTP4 in MISO speak. And so this larger project has a segment in Minnesota, and we obviously are not reviewing or approving anything related to the project in the state of Minnesota. So we are only deciding on the Wisconsin segment of that larger project that was approved by MISO. And as I said, while this proposed project was studied by MISO, in this application before us, we are charged with reviewing whether or not this project meets the state of Wisconsin requirements for issuance of a CPCN, which is primarily focused on the benefits to Wisconsin. Staff and the applicant did an excellent job of ensuring we have a robust record of evidence to review to consider the specific impacts to just this state. The applicant's stated need for and benefits of the project include reducing congestion, increasing transmission capacity and reliability, allowing low-cost energy from renewable resources in neighboring states, supporting an overall more robust and flexible system, and providing net economic benefits to Wisconsin customers while also creating jobs and economic benefits to local communities. It is important to note that the project's need has not been disputed by any interveners in this case, and there are two routes that the applicants provide for our review, which we'll discuss when we get to issue 6 in our DM. I'll give a quick overview of my position on this project before turning it over to my colleagues for any opening remarks that they may have. Overall, I will be supporting the approval of this CPCN based on the substantial evidence in the record that this project will provide benefits to Wisconsin customers in the broader region, with substantial economic and reliability benefits being the primary source of those. Both the applicant and staff have verified that the project is needed to maintain reliability and provide a wide variety of benefits. I do have some specific concerns related to the cost basis used to determine environmental impact fees for the affected communities of this project, and we will discuss that when we get to issues 10D and 10E in our decision matrix. It's important to note that today we are only deciding on the certification and siting of the project and not how this project ultimately gets paid for. Ultimately, the cost recovery is determined by FERC, the MISO tariff, and other state proceedings here at the Commission. So before we dive into the individual issues, I will turn things over to my colleagues. Chair Strand.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins, for that thorough and helpful introduction. I don't have anything to add other than just echoing your thanks. Heavy lift, huge project, and so I appreciate all the work that was done by our staff and by the applicant on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
Same, I'd echo your thanks to staff and the parties and the commenters who made comments at various steps in our review process here. I found that helpful as well. And I also noted the applicant's engagement with the public and with landowners. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit more as we get into the specific issues, but some of the benefits that are happening around the Minnesota-Wisconsin border are quite noteworthy here as well. So thanks for the good intro.
All right. Well, with that, we will jump into issue 1, and this issue deals with Wisconsin Statute 196.491, sub 3, sub D 2, where it states that the Commission shall approve a CPCN application if it determines that the proposed facility satisfies the reasonable needs of the public for an adequate supply of electric energy. We examine the reasonable needs considering load growth forecasts, applicable reliability standards, as well as the total project costs and benefits. The project was identified as part of the MISO tranche of projects that I discussed earlier, which included modeling that showed a need for improved transmission in the region. The applicant conducted further modeling to show specific benefits in improving reliability and access to lower cost generation from neighboring states. In my review of the large amounts of evidence in the record and the analysis supporting this project, I found those to be robust and clearly demonstrating that this project will satisfy the reasonable needs of the public for an adequate supply of energy. Perhaps the most important component of an adequate supply of energy is a reliable transport and delivery of that energy. The reliability analysis in this case contained clear demonstration that the project is needed to ensure reliable delivery of electricity under a wide variety of different projected changes that are occurring on the power grid in our region. Further, the project demonstrated net economic benefits under a wide range of scenarios and has been stress tested under a variety of sensitivities. The economic benefits were extensively modeled using production cost modeling and other methods, and were reviewed closely by staff and replicated. And it was further supported by evidence submitted by MISO and their regional planning process. The analysis in total demonstrated increased efficiency of utility service, reductions in congestion, lowering of production costs, and increasing flexibility of the transmission system. For all of those reasons, that put me at alternative 1, that yes, the proposed project will satisfy the reasonable needs of the public for an adequate supply of electric energy. Chair Strand.
Thank you, alt 1, for the reasons that you described.
Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you. I'm at alternative 1 as well, and would just agree that there's strong evidence in this record about the project satisfying the reasonable needs of the public. And I think your notes on what the record showed in terms of reliability are spot on. And then reliability also comes into, as you're describing, part of the cost benefit of the project as well, and it's one of the components of that. And I just want to note that one thing that stood out to me that I think is important is that this is one of the areas in the Midwest subregion that you're discussing that's been identified as needing transmission upgrades. And this project is increasing west to east transfer capability and relieving congestion around the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. And it's providing an outlet for lower cost renewables from the west to come east and reach us here in Wisconsin. And so as this project is relieving this congestion, it will affect energy prices along the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. And one thing that I thought is important to call out here is there's a transmission bottleneck there, primarily due to the Mississippi River as a physical geographical constraint. And that congestion that exists is preventing the lower cost renewable energy from reaching Wisconsin consumers. And so one thing that I really want to note is that the congestion results in higher energy prices for Wisconsin, and our average real-time energy prices, pursuant to the information in the record, have been $18 per megawatt hour higher than Minnesota prices, and Wisconsin customers paid $1.3 billion more per year from 2021 to 2024 than Minnesota did for the same amount of energy due to this. So just something under this particular issue that I wanted to call out as a particularly compelling benefit of this project. Thank you.
Definitely, and thank you for highlighting that. I plan to highlight that to some extent in issue 2. I couldn't decide where it fit more appropriately, probably issue 1. So yeah, thank you for raising that. I thought that evidence was really noteworthy as well. So I'll sorry if I repeat any of that when I get into issue 2 here, but I think that's great to highlight. All right, so we're good on 1. We'll move on to 2. And because this project includes transmission lines designed for operation at a voltage of 345 kV, our statute requires that to approve the line, it must provide usage, service, or increase regional reliability benefits to the wholesale and retail customers or members in this state, and the benefits of the high voltage transmission line need to be reasonable in relation to the costs of the line. The applicant provided analysis regarding the various benefits of the project, and I've already mentioned what those were in my opening comments. And in reviewing the requirements here, I thought that the analysis clearly demonstrated a large amount of benefits compared to the cost. The interveners provided evidence of persistent recent historical energy price differentials in the MISO wholesale market, where lower priced electricity was regularly observed in Minnesota and unable to flow to Wisconsin, as Commissioner Nieto was just stating. The analysis showed that the project addresses the limitations by reducing thermal loading on many different transmission system elements, including severe overloads in central Wisconsin. In particular, there were 17 heavily loaded elements and 59 heavily loaded elements that were subject to N-1 contingencies. And so by addressing those from a reliability perspective, you're able to unlock those economic benefits that are the true source of the bottleneck of delivery of that cheaper electricity. So improved usage and service through the improvements to what is affectionately known as the MWEX stability interface provides a higher safe loading limit, and that was all demonstrated in the reliability analysis that allows for increased flows across the Mississippi River. And importantly, while the MISO analysis of this project was primarily focused on benefits to the larger portfolio and the MISO region, the applicant and the commission staff all conducted more focused analysis that analyzed the benefits of this project that accrue solely to Wisconsin, which was very helpful in demonstrating compliance with this particular requirement. The analysis indicated economic benefits from a variety of sources. There were also benefits from the avoidance of and replacement of other local reliability projects. So some parts of this project are replacing aging facilities, and so those were quantified, and I thought that was done in a very detailed and clear manner. And let's see here. Collectively, the analysis of the applicant and staff demonstrate that the benefits of the project are much greater than the costs, leading to a very favorable benefit to cost ratio and net economic benefits to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. I want to reiterate a point I made during our LRTP dockets from last year, that this analysis in this case shows a strong economic benefit to the ratepayers of Wisconsin that are largely generated from sourcing cheaper energy from outside of the state. And the only way for that benefit to materialize to Wisconsin ratepayers requires that the commission ask for this type of analysis in our generation proceedings. And then all of that leads me to alternative one, that yes, the proposed project will provide usage service and increase regional reliability benefits. So, Chair Strand.
Alternative one, thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
Alternative one as well. I thought that was well said, and thanks again for reiterating the point about generation proceedings and unlocking those lower cost resources now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Issue 3 is the energy priority law issue, and under the EPL, the commission has the obligation to consider the priorities in all energy-related decisions. The applicant did consider no action, low voltage, and non-transmission alternatives as part of their analysis and did not find that they were cost-effective or technically feasible to address the range of reliability and economic issues that are reasonably foreseen to occur here in the near future. The applicant argues that the project supports energy conservation and energy efficiency through improvements to the grid and reduction in system losses. And all interveners supported alternative 1, that no EPL alternatives exist that were cost effective and technically feasible. So even in transmission cases where the EPL doesn't fit necessarily as nicely, I do believe it's really important to ensure that reasonable alternatives were considered, especially those alternatives that are required as part of the statute. I thought that the applicant and staff collectively did a great job of vetting the various alternatives that could reasonably be considered comparable, demonstrating that those alternatives had a variety of shortcomings, and therefore I'm in agreement that no higher ranked EPL priorities alternatives exist. So I'm at Alt 1. Chair Strand.
Alt 1, thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
I was at Alt 1 as well, and I agree with your analysis about the applicability of the EPL to these transmission line decisions and the importance of using this as a lens through which we do our review consistently. And I just noted that this project will facilitate the flow of power from non-combustible renewable energy sources to Wisconsin. This is part of the energy priorities, a second priority. It'll help reduce carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions in the region and support the development and viability of non-combustible renewable energy sources. It will do this while decreasing costs at the same time, and so is clearly a cost-effective priority option. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, issue 4 was uncontested, and it's related to adverse impacts on competition in the wholesale market. And because it is uncontested, we will move along to issue 5. And this is another requirement for the issuance of a CPCN where we determine that the project route would not unreasonably interfere with the orderly land use and development plans of the area involved. The commission must also be aware of the potential conflicts with local ordinances, zoning, and land use plans when making our final decisions. The applicant notes their engagement with local communities and review of municipal land use and development plans as part of their project design process to minimize potential conflicts with those plans. And commission staff conducted their own analysis and similarly did not identify any conflicts with any known federal, state, or local plans. The applicants worked with local governments, and the project had many instances showing adaptability in siting process, especially as it relates to conservation areas and public lands. And the project clearly followed the siting guidelines and relied on existing right-of-ways to the greatest extent possible, which collectively makes any impacts reasonable in my review. So for this issue, I was at Alt 1 that the project complied with the statute and does not unreasonably interfere with the orderly land use and development plans for the area involved. Chair Strand.
Alt 1 for the reasons you described. Thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
I was at alternative 1 for the same reasons as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Issue 6 is shifting our discussion to the proposed route options for the project. I'll remind folks that we have a statutory requirement related to routing that requires the commission must find the design and route as being in the public interest, considering alternative routes, individual hardships, engineering, economic, safety, reliability, and other environmental factors. 2 routes were proposed by the applicant. We have a southern preferred and northern alternate route. Both routes begin and end east of the Mississippi River near the Alma substation, diverge shortly after that, and then reconvene following a common route east that ends at the expanded Tremville substation, which was recently approved by the commission in docket 5 CE 158. The preferred route, the southern route, is 34 miles long with 205 structures and includes 7.4 miles of distribution lines that would be buried as part of that route. And that route has an estimated cost of $189 million. The alternate or northern route is 45 miles long, which would include 273 structures, as well as the undergrounding of 16.7 miles of distribution facilities. That route has an estimated total cost of $276 million. As always, the impact analysis prepared for the commission was top-notch and included great discussion of both the quantitative and qualitative impacts that transmission project developments are anticipated to have. The EIS does not sugarcoat those impacts of infrastructure development and does a great job of giving the commission incredibly useful information and sobering assessments of those impacts and the possibility to mitigate them. This is all very helpful when it comes time to make a final route determination. My assessment for this project, much like that of staff, both here at the commission, DNR, DATCAP, and also of the applicant, identified the southern route as superior for a variety of reasons, including that the route generally minimizes impacts, follows existing corridors for 99% of the 34 miles. There are much fewer impacts to residences, especially nearby residences, with 0 occurring within 150 feet of the center line. Much less impacts to agricultural lands were observed by DATCAP for the southern route. The route also had much less impact on land that was in farmland preservation programs. There were in total fewer acres of new right-of-way associated with this route and significantly fewer structures, which all combined to lead to a much lower overall cost for the southern route. So for those reasons, I was at alternative 1 that the commission authorizes the proposed southern route. Chair Strand.
I was at alternative 1 for the proposed southern route as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nieto.
I was also at alternative 1, authorizing the southern route for all of the good impact reasons you described. And I noted as well, as we said at the outset, that the applicants work with landowners, with communities, holding open houses, taking stakeholder feedback about the routing and siting was also helpful, I think, in the outcome here in this record today. So thanks.
Definitely. Issue 7 is related to the estimated cost of the project, and it was uncontested. And while I'm okay with those total project cost estimates, I just want to clarify that approval of this issue does not mean I'm okay with the numbers of costs that were used for the environmental impact fees, which we'll get to in issue 10. So that brings us to issue 8, which presents all the standard order conditions that commission staff suggest for this project. The applicants do not object to the inclusion of any of these, and in my review, I know we've had a lot of conversation on these. I think these are the latest and greatest in my review, and I was at alternative 1 that all of the conditions were necessary for approval of the proposed project. Chair Strand.
Shockingly, we're not going to have a long discussion about these conditions, but yes, I'm at all 1 as well. Thank
All
you.
right, phew, I was nervous. Commissioner Nieto.
Hold on, though. Just kidding.
I'd like to discuss that. I was at all 1 as well. Thanks.
Great. We've made it through. All right. Issue 9 that brings us to, which addresses a project-specific order condition that is only relevant to the alternate or northern route, which we did not approve in a couple issues ago. So we will move on to issue 10 because this issue is no longer relevant. All right, so issue 10A proposes several versions of a project-specific order condition to impose clearing restrictions to mitigate the spread of oak wilt and a variety of language surrounding possible flexibility on those restrictions. I'll note that the strictest version of this condition, listed as condition 1 in our DM for this issue, was included as part of past final decisions for the other 2 LRTP dockets that the commission decided last fall. The applicant is supportive of the inclusion of a more flexible condition, arguing that they intend to avoid cutting of oak trees during the restriction period, but that is not always practicable to do so during construction. So, consistent with my past position on this issue in our recent LRTP cases, I find that the strict version of this condition listed here as condition 1 to be required. I am at that position because oak wilt has been confirmed in these counties where the project is located. And notably, the applicant has stated the timeline when they will plan to clear the right-of-way would occur outside of the window anyhow. The applicant fully intends and is on the record as planning to avoid all cutting and pruning during the exclusion period and notes that any post-construction activity would follow relevant guidelines that are in place. I know one of my colleagues had some different thoughts on this in our last case, so I'll be interested to hear those. But for this issue, I was at alternative 1, that condition 1 is necessary for approval of the proposed project. Chair Strand.
Thank you. I actually think that our staff did a really good job of identifying condition language that appropriately weaves together the cutting and pruning responsibilities under the administrative rules, but also considers at least my long-held concerns, which are expressed frequently, that we are not setting conditions on construction that are overly burdensome and then can lead to cost increases and impact schedules, without the demonstration of the overall benefits being showing that those types of conditions are absolutely necessary. So again, I think our staff did a really good job of taking all of those considerations in and coming up with what is condition 3 and alternative 5 in the decision matrix. So it includes the extent practicable, flexible language that this commission has adopted for a number of project-specific conditions, but it also, again, is, I think, appropriately in compliance with pruning and tree restriction or issues that help us uphold what we need to do in Administrative Code 113.0511. So I am comfortable and think that that also is consistent with, as it says in our DM, with other order conditions that were recently approved in recent electric transmission CPCN application. So I am at alt 5, which is condition 3 from staff, and I will just note that the applicant is also comfortable with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nieto?
Thanks to you both. We have a number of options here, and I think it's for a number of reasons. And we have some overlapping sets of requirements and some overlapping kind of sets of dates and things like that I think folks are just trying to sort through in this record. I am initially coming in at the option to take the first option listed in our DM, which is alternative 1. And I think the part of the issue that I've had with some of the wording, to the extent practicable, to the extent feasible, and some of the additional wording in the second and third options here, is that overlap with our administrative code requirements. And so essentially, one thing that concerns me is putting, like, to the extent practicable in front of something that is already an express code requirement that has a prohibition against it. But then at the same time, the date range that we're giving here is a little longer than the date range in our code because DNR has a longer date range. They might be a little bit ahead of us in terms of updates and in what their requirements are. And so, and I think where the applicant is coming in here and where they were really expressing concern is I think they're kind of saying, we are okay with following, obviously, the admin code. We're okay with the April 1 to July 15. What we're worried about is that more stringent language doesn't give us what the code gives us, which is except for in an emergency. So there might be an emergency during that time period, and the code allows for pruning and cutting during that emergency situation and has some other exceptions in it. So I understand that too. And I think, I'd either be open to sticking with the language in number 1 for the reasons that I've stated, or doing kind of a meet in the middle modification, which would just be, and I think somebody discussed this in the record. I'd have to flip back to the witness's name. I apologize, but it's really about that 113, making sure those exceptions stay in place. So I think you could also just say what number 1 says and add on, and in accordance with WIS Admin Code Section PSC 113.0511, which would just kind of clarify that, yes, of course, we're okay with the exceptions that are in code without having to add this additional language here. So I would be good with either one of those and interested to hear whether my colleagues would stick in their original positions or want to do kind of a modified meet in the middle. Thanks.
Thanks for that. I shared a similar read where what the applicant was asking for is already allowed by code, and so they were focused on emergencies and also post-construction. Sometimes the record was talking about, but what if after completion? And there's already guidelines for how to do that. And so there was a disconnect between the language and I think what the applicant was after, and that's why I was also supporting alternative 1 here. So the flexibility that the applicant was after is already afforded by the code, as you just stated, and for that reason, I don't think we need to be repetitive in our order language either. If it's to your point, if it's already covered, it's just extra words on the page, and we can save a few keystrokes for legal, I guess. So I'd be at the clean Alt 1, but that's where I'm at.
I'm gonna stay no matter what, so you guys can figure it out.
And thanks to you both, I'll stay with the Alt 1 here.
Okay.
You can record me as a no on that one.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so that was 10A, and that brings us to 10B, which introduces a condition to require the applicant to abide by DNR guidelines for the treatment of heterobasidian root disease, or HRD. And I'll note that the applicant does not object to the proposed condition. This one is basically uncontested, and it's related to a recommendation by staff to adopt the DNR guidelines. And I think that is well-reasoned and supported, and has been supported by the commission in recent project approvals. HRD has been found in both of the counties, as explained in testimony, and for those reasons, I'm at alternative 1, that the proposed condition is necessary for approval. Chair Strand.
Shocker, I'm at Alt 2, that we should slightly modify it to add extent practicable, as we do, when it's a good idea to include flexibility. But based on the last item discussion, it's probably up for debate. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
We do have some discussion on these conditions. I was at Alt 2, but for a different reason.
Oh.
I identified this as when we looked at the Western Wisconsin proceeding, there was this add-on that wasn't present in it, but it was included in grid forward. And that add-on language was that clause and request written permission. And so we struck that in order to make this language exactly consistent across those 2 previous proceedings. And so I would be at Alt 2 here to modify it by after November 30, it needs a period and doesn't need and request written permission, which I believe would be then consistent with the previous 2 LRTPs.
And that is in part because it's redundant to the sentence that was afterwards, right?
Yes, it was redundant with the sentence afterwards, and then it was just a slight difference in language between LRTP 5 and 6, so
Yep.
we just cleaned it up in the one where it was redundant
Okay.
in our past discussions.
Yep. I'm supportive of that.
I'm supportive of that, plus to the extent practicable. So still Alt 2.
All right. And you're
Which we also said the last time HRD was up. We had extent practicable language, just so everyone's aware of that. Thank you.
I don't have any notes on that, so I cannot confirm or deny. I did for the last one, but
Yes, my intent was to keep it fully consistent with the last 2 LRTPs. So I think I don't have to the extent practicable for this one either. So if we had that, that's where I would ultimately be.
I don't recall that either. I thought we only did it for the birds and the bats condition. That was the language that I saw the extent practicable for.
You can check Western Wisconsin and go forward if someone wants to tell us, but either way.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys.
Okay.
That would be helpful for me before finalizing, and if we can perhaps circle back to that
Yeah.
before
we
I
can, for sure.
state what alternative I'm at. Thank you.
We will do that. We will let 10B hang there for a little bit, and then we will move along to 10C, which presents a condition for the applicant to work with commission staff to prepare and issue an RFP to hire a combined independent environmental monitor / independent agricultural monitor to monitor and report on agricultural and environmental issues during construction. In past projects, we've grappled with defining the threshold for when this type of monitoring is appropriate. In this case, I believe staff at the Commission, DNR, and DATCAP have done a great job of communicating the unique and environmentally sensitive aspects of this project area that, in my mind, make this an ideal project for an IEM / IAM. Importantly, the condition requires that the applicant work with staff in issuing the RFP. We talked about some of the unique structures of this arrangement in the past. I think staff's role in the issuance of the RFP is critical, so I'm glad that that is captured in this proposed condition language. And further, I think the project is in a very topographically unique part of the state with many waterways, hills, valleys, and agricultural land all smashed together. And so this condition seems very appropriate given the environmentally sensitive nature of this area and the many potential impacts that were identified. So for those reasons, I was at alternative 1, that the proposed condition is necessary for approval. Chair Strand.
I had a very fun discussion about this last time. It was in a transmission DM for us. And you kind of highlighted some of the issues that I raised then regarding the RFP process, the fox guarding the hen house, the roles of the IEM versus the IAM, et cetera. So I will not rehash all of those right now. I think we did eventually end up at what is similar to Alt 1 here in that previous docket. So I can do that. But again, I still have concerns about just this process as a whole and what triggers it and who's doing what and why it's necessary on some and not necessary on others. Slightly comforted again by the fact that the IEM can stop work, but the IAM can't. But again, what kind of delegation of our authority are we actually comfortable with? So begrudgingly, I can join an Alt 1, but I still think that there are a lot of things regarding the IEM, IAM process in general that should probably be better fleshed out if we're going to continue to allow these things going forward.
Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you for your comments. I was at alternative 1 here, and I think to this discussion about the process and the structure as well. One thing that also helped me with that discussion was that the applicant here has hired an IEM on previous commission projects and has also indicated it's familiar with the process and doesn't object, as is staff here. And I think to the chair's point, there's a lot of process and different parties involved, and definitely something that going forward I would be open to continuing the discussion on. So thanks to you both.
Thank you, and same here. So that brings us to 10D. Wisconsin law imposes a one-time environmental impact fee and an annual impact fee for construction of high-voltage lines with a nominal voltage of 345 kV or higher. Under the statute, the applicants must pay the Wisconsin Department of Administration 0.3% of the cost of the approved line annually for an annual impact fee and 5% of the cost of the approved line for a one-time environmental impact fee. The one-time fee is distributed 50% to the counties and 50% to the municipalities based on the proportionate length of the line through each county and municipality respectively. The commission is responsible for determining the 345 kV cost basis from which the impact fees are calculated. The commission has typically found that the cost basis excludes lower voltage transmission and distribution costs, along with O&M and AFUDC, but includes all costs associated with the construction of the 345 kV infrastructure, such as material, labor, real estate, etc. While this issue is uncontested in our DM, I have major concerns with the applicant's proposed cost basis and will walk through those with the help of a handout. So if the secretary could hand that out, I'll talk through those. Or legal, sorry. Handouts coming from everywhere. We're good. We'll get Michaela.
A note to those listening that this handout will be available shortly on the Commission's website under the news and events menu on the commission calendar. So you can follow along that way.
Okay, so now I see my colleagues have the handout, so I'll continue the discussion. And we'll start on the first page of this handout. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the first page, table 4.1-1 from the application, specifically the far right column, which is the southern route that we approved. That is the basis provided by the applicant of $9.3 million of a total $188 million project. This implies that the construction of a 34-mile 345 kV transmission line is less than 5% a 345 kV transmission line. I believe that what may have happened here is that the applicant could have inadvertently mislabeled the rows of what is 345 and what is lower voltage facilities, which would bring the ratio of what is high voltage and what is low voltage into a more regular ratio that we see with these types of projects. That said, this cost information was submitted into the record at least 4 separate times, and this issue was repeated in all of those different submissions, whether it be Excel documents or parts of the application. And the impact of this error is quite large. The applicant has calculated a one-time environmental impact fee of $466,000, which would actually be north of $8 million if we had a more reasonable breakdown of what the 345 kV costs actually are. Further, the annual impact fee would be north of $500,000 and not the $28,000, and these are all highlighted in the handout here. So basically, by having this very strange ratio of what is high voltage to low voltage, that trickles through to the costs or the revenues that flow to the communities that are impacted by this project in a very major way. So for this issue, 10D, we were being asked to accept the applicant's proposed basis of the environmental impact fee, which is the breakdown of these costs, and I do not want to approve the breakdown of these costs because of the impact it has on the environmental impact fees. So instead, what I'm going to do is recommend a modified version of the condition in 10E, which will allow the applicant to hopefully provide some clarification on this breakdown in addition to the distribution of costs that's typically handled in that condition. So our next condition is typically we approve the breakdown between low voltage and high voltage, and then in 10E, we typically have staff work with the applicant to basically get all the numbers for how we distribute that, and that is my second table there. That's what we typically get in 10E is tell us all the towns, municipalities, the counties, what their portion of the total cost is. You can see that the southern route total is highlighted there, so it carries over from our determination of the appropriate basis into the distribution. So I'm going to recommend in 10E a modified version of that condition that will allow the applicant to work with staff to get a more appropriate basis and distribution of these costs. So I'll read through that language here shortly, but I want to pause there and see if there's any questions from my colleagues on 10D, the cost basis for this project.
Should we take a break?
Yes, let's take
I
a break.
just,
Sir.
well, I have one question, actually, it's not a question, it's clarification. So on 7, since obviously 7 is related to this because 7 is the overall cost, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that you're okay with the overall cost. It's the math and the allocation, the distribution that was used from that number that you have issues with.
Right, we
Yep.
have to approve the overall cost and,
Yeah.
yep.
All I'm asking is, you're good on 7, it's just how 7 was allocated or distributed.
Right.
In the math.
Right.
For the one-time and annual fee apportionments.
Exactly.
Yep, got it, thank you.
Should I talk about the proposed condition before a break, or do you want to do the break first?
Why don't you just read through it,
Okay.
everyone, and then you can take a break.
So what I've referenced as a potential solution, I'll talk about, it's in the handout. And issue 10D and 10E are both listed there. So I'm recommending that we do not accept the applicant's proposed basis for determining the fee. And then in 10E, in the purple language, we have some modifications, and I'll just read through this. The applicant shall work with commission staff to determine the appropriate cost basis for the one-time and annual environmental impact fees, which shall include all costs associated with the construction of the 345 kV transmission infrastructure, as well as adequate information to determine the distribution of the one-time and annual impact fees within 30 days from the date of the final decision. Approval of the revised cost basis shall be delegated to the DERA Division Administrator. So that is how I am proposing to allow for an update to this cost basis for determining the fees.
Okay, we're going to take a break to discuss the proposed changes and handout with legal. Thank you. Do you want We'll continue our discussion on the handout from Commissioner Hawkins, in which we will need to address issue 10D and issue 10E. So I will turn it over to Commissioner Hawkins and we will keep going. Thank you.
Sounds good. And so I'd been discussing the proposed condition language for 10E, and Chair Strand, you raised a question about issue 7, which is the total cost. And that may also be impacted because part of the total cost is the environmental impact fees. And so I'm assuming that'll flow through whatever new numbers potentially get worked out with staff, and the applicant will flow through to that issue as well. So just wanted to circle back on that one. And I'll open it up to my colleagues to see if they have any thoughts on the proposed path forward.
Pause while legal makes sure that they're okay with that with 7, because 7 was uncontested.
Okay.
Thank you.
And my thinking there, just to add, is the change in the one-time fee is probably around $8 million, and so that would show up in the total project cost as something that wasn't part of the project cost before. So
I think we should address that in issue 7 to make sure that we have language that incorporates the later discussion.
okay. So we'll focus on the condition now, and then we can go back to 7, and I think we're also going back to 10B. So, any thoughts, concerns, questions on the proposed language for 10E, which addresses both 10D and 10E?
I am okay with the 10D, and I think it's necessary given what we want to do in 10E and given the issues raised through this discussion and through this handout. But I want to make sure, but it could be impacted by our discussion on 7, but I want to make sure that we are limiting the language in 10E to simply allow, because we are saying no to the cost basis in 10D, and because the issues that you have highlighted with what's in the record is about the allocation of 345 versus non-345, and not about which costs are included and not included in developing these fees, which actually is discussed in the issue scope in 10D. I think that we need to limit the language in 10E to the following. The applicant shall work with commission staff to determine the appropriate cost basis for the one-time and annual environmental impact fees, as well as adequate information to determine the distribution of the one-time and annual environmental impact fees within 30 days from the date of the final decision. Approval of the revised cost basis shall be delegated to the DARA division administrator. So again, the issue that's been identified is regarding the cost basis. So we are now asking in 10E for a cost basis, for a modified cost basis to be worked on with staff, which gives us which gives our staff the flexibility there. And then the cost basis is then what determines the distribution to the local units of government. And then it would, rather than slow this down because we are under a tight statutory deadline, it would delegate that final approval to the administrator. Those are the 3 things I think that we are seeking to happen here, and we also delineate the time period that we want it to happen. I don't think we want to cloud the cost basis exercise with language about all costs associated, because that doesn't jive with like everything that exists in the statutes and the rules that even get us to this point. And I also want to make sure that we are being clear that this is a special circumstance that is limited to this CPCN and this project only, and that we are not doing anything to modify how the commission allocates or approaches this issue, because this does appear in transmission CPCNs that include 345 kV, I want to make sure that we're being very clear in the order that this only pertains to this and that we're not doing anything to tie our hands or to change these conditions in future CPCNs, period.
That sounds good. I'm fine with that. I went back and forth. Mostly what I wanted to do was get out, direction for what staff should be looking for. And the commission in the past has provided additional guidance on what those costs are and what they are not. And I don't think it's necessary here because it seems like we've arrived at a pretty common understanding in other cases. And so, as long as, and I've talked with staff in preparing for today, that I think they have an understanding that, obviously the real estate being zero is not correct, and things like that. So I don't think we need to further define. I just wanted to make sure that there was an awareness of the shortcomings of what was provided, and then I'm fine with that just being out in the world, and we don't need to overspecify. I think that's a fair way to go about it.
Okay, thank you.
This all sounds good to me. I think it's a good catch on your part and a good clean suggestion with regard to 10D and 10E. And Chair Strand, I agree also with your clarifications about the applicability in this case versus other cases and how this is a unique catch. So thanks.
Okay. So we have a modified version of what was in my handout, which just has a sentence, a clause stricken, not a full sentence, starting at which and running through infrastructure. Is that right, Chair Strand? So I'm good with that. And if we all are, I think we can approve that condition for 10E.
Do you want to make we should probably do 10D first.
Yeah, so,
that- yeah.
you're right, we've just talked about it. So for 10D, I'm at proposed alternative 2, which is do not accept the basis.
Yeah, I am supportive of that. So I think, just again, to be clear, that in issue 10D, we are not accepting the uncontested alternative, and instead, and we'll let Commissioner Nieto weigh in as well, but accepting a proposed alternative to not, or issuing a proposed alternative to not accept the applicant's proposed basis for determining the annual fee and one-time environmental impact fee. Since that is in the record in several places, like Commissioner Hawkins said, we want to ensure that we are being clear that we do not accept that.
Yep.
Given these issues, and that instead, we're going to direct what we're going to direct in 10E to help correct that.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Nato, are you good with that for 10D?
Yes, proposed alternative 2 as well.
Great. Then for 10E, we are going to approve a modified condition, which is alternative 2. And we are going to approve the language from my handout with the edits as provided by the chair. Are we all good on Alt 2 there? Yes?
Yes.
All right.
Proposal 2, do you want me to read it again, or are you okay?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm good.
Good.
And then as long as we're on 10, if we can come back.
Well, we have to let Commissioner Nieto
Oh,
weigh
I'm
in on
sorry, I thought
10E.
you.
That's okay. Yep, so 10E, I am also at that Alt 2 modified as we've discussed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so coming back to 10B, we had two different approaches to Alt 2. And so to clarify, the previous two dockets, Grid Forward and Western Feed, did include to the extent practicable. And then they also ended at November 30th, so they took off that extra clause that Commissioner Nieto suggested removing. So that is the,
It also included the requesting written permission that Commissioner Nieto caught as well.
yes, so, which is
The final.
in the proposed
Yep.
Yep.
condition here. So I can read it if that would help.
I'm good with that. If we've confirmed that it was, yep, and I'm good with that catch and making it consistent. So
Okay.
that would be Alt 2 modified as we've discussed here.
Yeah, another good catch, also at that Alt 2 with both of the modifications.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
And then do we want to go back to issue 7 now, which is the total cost? Because it's related to what we just
Yes.
dealt with. So while issue 7 was uncontested, it's my understanding that the applicant's estimates of costs will change based on the anticipated change to the cost basis for the environmental impact fees. And so I would recommend not approving the uncontested cost estimates and recommend a proposed alternative 2, which was those cost estimates should be reflective of the information staff receives from our condition in 10E. So I don't know, we could go about just not approving those cost estimates. We could go about it in another way, but that's me being creative on the fly, dangerous. I'll turn it over to the chair or legal.
So from a legal perspective, I would like to take a pause to discuss with DERA staff the best approach to arriving at something that we can agree to today.
I'll throw out that if it's possible to do something where it's basically consistent with the commission's direction in issues 10D and E, that the estimated cost as determined in issue 7 should reflect, or, those are the three things that are really at odds, right? It's the estimated cost of the project, if that's going to change based on the fact that we are not accepting the cost basis in 10D and then asking for the cost basis and then the distribution to be updated in 10E, right? So as long as what happens in 10D and 10E is the way that it should be, and if that impacts the estimated costs from issue 7, that's okay, as long as 10D and 10E are done the way they're supposed to be, right? So if there's, yes, you should absolutely have that conversation, but I think given the interplay and given the direction in 10E, if there's something we need to add there to harken back to the estimated project cost in issue 7, that's probably what we should try to do. Again, March 12th. Tick-tock, right? So, thank you.
We might propose a condition that allows DERA to determine that final cost.
Based on what happens in
And-
10E. Yeah.
I'm
okay
comfortable
with
with that.
Yep, I am as well.
Maybe it's if the information and cost basis determined, and cost basis and distribution determined in 10E changes the estimated cost of the proposed project as approved in issue 7, that as long as it's in line with whatever 10E, once the math is done under 10E, then we're good, right? It's only if that affects it. We know they're related, so there's definitely the chance, which I think is important to speak to. But again, our issue is not questioning the estimated cost of the project or the inputs into that. It's how the 345 versus non-345 is being allocated and then distributed.
Right.
I'd like to take a break and talk with staff.
Yep, that's fine, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for that guidance. Okay, so given that the cost is always an estimated cost, and the certificate and CPCNs will note as modified by this final decision at a total estimated cost, we're comfortable with keeping that as an uncontested estimated cost. Okay, we can move on to 11.
Okay.
As long as you
If
don't
ever-
need to come back.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got 10 D and E. Sorry, I'm not in the right spot. 11. All right. So, issue 11 provides the opportunity for any additional conditions or mitigation measures identified in the record to be addressed, and no additional conditions or mitigation measures were identified, which puts me at alternative 2 for issue 11, that no additional conditions or mitigations that were identified are necessary for approval. Chair Strand.
Alt 2, thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
Alt 2. Thanks.
Great. Then issue 12A asks the commission to consider whether or not the commission has complied with WEPA pursuant to Wisconsin statutes and administrative code rules. As a standard with a project of this nature, an environmental impact statement was prepared jointly by the commission and DNR staff in accordance with the Wisconsin Environmental Policy Act, or WEPA. And as with all projects, my first step in understanding what the heck is going on with the project is reading the EA or EIS, and this one was no different, was very helpful in explaining the project and its potential impacts, provided a great analysis of the possible mitigations to those impacts, and assessed the differences between the possible routes and other project alternatives in general, and did a great job comprehensively reviewing all of the things that are required to be considered in an EIS. So I was at alternative 1, that yes, the commission has complied with WEPA. Chair Strand.
Alt 1, thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
Alt 1.
Great. In addition to complying with WEPA, issue 12B asks the commission to consider whether the proposed project will have undue adverse impacts on other environmental values as required by Wisconsin statute. The impacts on these other environmental values are considered in the planning and design of the project, and further emphasized through the inclusion of other conditions proposed by the DNR representatives to mitigate potential impacts. For this issue, I was at alternative 1. No, the proposed project will not have undue adverse impacts on other environmental values. Chair Strand.
Alt 1, thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
Alt 1.
Great. That brings us to our final issue, which is whether or not to approve the CPCN if all the criteria are met. Having walked through all the issues and all of those criteria, I am at alternative 2, which is to grant the CPCN with the modifications and conditions that we've discussed here today. Chair Strand.
Alt 2, thank you.
Commissioner Nieto.
Alt 2.
All right. I believe we are ready for a motion on this then.
Ready. All right. In docket 1515 CE 103, I move we approve the Alma to Blair transmission line project consistent with our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you to Commissioner Hawkins for leading our discussion, and to legal counsel and staff for helping us navigate those changes. That does conclude our official business for today. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 19th, 2026 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, February 19, 2026 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, we're adjourned.